if you don't fully trust yourself, it's really hard to not seek external permission for everything you want to do, right? Because there's never going to be a time where you're actually fully ready.
You know that moment when you look at your calendar, your inbox, your career, and you think, wait, is this it? Yeah, you've done all the right things. You've got the job, climbed the ladder, but something feels off. It feels like you're living someone else's idea of a successful life. Well, today's guest, Erifili Gunari, felt that too, except she felt it at 19. And while everyone else was waiting to be picked, she started building her own thing. And now today, Erifili runs one of the leading Gen Z-led agencies, working with brands like Pepsi, IKEA, and the United Nations. Today's episode is about why so many of us are quietly craving more freedom, more meaning, and more ownership in life.
You owe yourself a life well lived. And I go based on that principle of I can't be an obstacle to myself between me and my own goals and dreams.
I'm Joe. This is Founders and Builders, and now let's get into it. So back in the pandemic, you were 20 years old and you founded the Z-Link marketing agency.
Yes.
So what would you say to people that don't feel they're ready to start working on their idea just yet?
Honestly, I definitely wasn't ready to start working on that back then. I mean, first of all, I didn't have funding. I was in uni. I was working outside of uni. I didn't know how to run a business. I hadn't studied business. I was studying art history. So, I mean, there were like lots of circumstances, I guess, against me. But there were so many ways to bring it to life, that I'm really glad I started early enough before I could have overthought the whole thing. And to me, that was just a lesson I carried through to everything else I did, because it just showed me that if I just, I was excited about the idea, and that's a very important thing. So I didn't want to wait around, and I didn't want to overthink every reason I had not to start it, because there certainly were so many. And then so I just kind of jumped right into it in my free time, kind of, bootstrapped it, took on more jobs, made the website. It was all like pretty bad first version, but it was enough to get it out there and then like figure out how to do it on the job, which I think is one of the very best things you can do when you want to work for yourself, is just learn like to create something and put it out there before you've got time to overthink it and stop yourself. Because like there's never going to be a time where you're actually fully ready.
And what gave you that? What did you see? What gave you the inspiration to start Z-Link?
I was working in social media marketing for a while, and it was sort of one of my hobbies growing up. And I think around the end of 2019, I was seeing a lot of research pop up about Gen Z and sort of generational behaviors. Now it's everywhere, right? But back then, McKinsey and all these companies were just starting to publish their reports on like who is Gen Z and what do they want, sort of thing. And it was like super new and really trendy and really like kind of groundbreaking for a lot of people to see all these labels and statistics about Gen Z for the first time and understand what differentiates a generation. And I saw a lot of stuff pop up about how like companies just don't know how to talk to Gen Z and we're so particular and this and that. And I had my background in social media marketing. I felt like I had a pretty good natural understanding of how to get my generation to engage with things, because I grew up like making literally fan pages and interest accounts online with like 50,000 followers each time on everything that I liked, and like kind of getting people organically to engage by learning how to build communities. And so I was like, okay, I kind of want to try setting up a marketing firm that focuses on just having a fully young team that helps big traditional brands communicate with young people by giving them a seat at their table and letting them have a say in strategy, content, community building, sort of marketing initiatives, etc. So no one was doing that, and I thought that was kind of crazy. I thought it was kind of like a no-brainer, and I think that's when you know you've got something that you might as well try. And now there's so many agencies doing that, which is a pretty good sign. Yeah.
And so when we think about Gen Z, how do you, if I was to say, put a blindfold on and you've got a person in front of you and I told you everything about their behaviors, what they're interested in, their activities, what would give you a signal that actually, yeah, this person is absolutely Gen Z? What's different about them?
It depends where we're talking about first, I'd say, because Gen Z tends to differ a lot around the world, and there's so many sort of subsets of Gen Z. But I think there's a few things that, as a whole, as a generation, even though it's really not a monolith, can still, there's still some commonalities, around the world that differ from previous generations. And the biggest ones I see are, I mean, first of all, the fact that we are the first generation of digital natives, and that means a lot of things. It means that we work differently. We're less likely to just like blindly subscribe to ways of working that seem outdated or seem not to serve us. More likely to just want to like restructure things and play around and experiment and do things differently. Another one is, of course, like it's a generation that has never lived without social media past like their, maybe first 10 to 13, 14 years.
Mm.
And that means that Gen Z is so much more connected in the way that they make friends and the way that they meet people, learn how to network. Like everything is just sort of so much more, everything feels a lot more possible because like that connection is innate in what we think is possible, right? So if you just want to meet someone, it's not an obstacle to you that you can't meet them in person. Like you can just kind of shoot your shot and reach out to anyone. And I think sort of that mindset of things are possible, growing up online, like knowing how to reach people, is a pretty defining characteristic. And I think that combined with the fact that Gen Z is the most entrepreneurial generation to date. I think 56% of Gen Zers in over 50 countries want to be self-employed or just start a business rather than work for an existing business.
Mm.
Combined with all of that, I think that makes for a pretty cool like way of working and pretty cool future of work that is being developed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And what do you think about where Gen Z, I love this idea that people are not just consuming the content that is created online from brands. A lot of this is kind of dissolved into the person I trust is the individual
Yeah.
that may have a brand behind them. How has that move from brands to personalities influenced Gen Z marketing?
Yeah. I mean, such an important question because Gen Z and I guess young millennials as well, and now more than anyone, Gen Alpha, grew up with like a million brands a day competing for their attention. And I think it makes it so that things that are not authentic or valuable just jump out at you more. And
Mm.
it's just much easier for you to not care. Like you're less susceptible to advertising, like traditional advertising, because there's so much of it and there's so much noise and everyone's competing for your attention online. So it feels like you're in Times Square all the time. It's like
Totally.
overwhelming, billboards everywhere, like
Yeah.
everything's happening. And so I think it's only natural that we resonate more with what's human rather than what is like artificial and clearly designed to sell to you. And so I think people that are vulnerable or real or more authentic online and, usually influencers, but influencers that you feel like you sort of know,
Mm.
you tend to trust them more because there's a personality behind them. You've built a sort of like parasocial trust with them often. And so when they endorse something, you feel like you know who is endorsing it. And like it's not just a brand that's trying to sell you something. Yeah.
And we were talking about this before we, started the recording, but just the power of putting something out there in the world that can attract people that are interested in the same topics as you,
Yeah.
that think a similar way to you,
Yeah.
that you can kind of, through expressing yourself online, you can find your people, you can find your community.
For sure. I think of it as increasing your surface area for serendipity, right? And you might have heard that before because I think that's like one of the ways we have to get lucky. Like if you want to increase your chances of getting lucky and you put yourself out there by writing online or creating content or having a podcast, or for me, this is what I find also through public speaking.
Hmm.
Like one of the reasons why I love public speaking is because when you speak to a room, you don't know who in the audience you would really like love to meet, but they know it after hearing you. So then the right people always come up to you.
Mm.
It's kind of the same, but more direct. And that's one of the most valuable things is like you're putting out signals to attract like-minded people. And then I think that always just makes your life better.
Mm-hmm.
Friendships, like work opportunities, partnerships, everything.
Mm-hmm. And I'd love to then, for the next part of the podcast, go into your blog, Crystal Clear, that you've been phenomenally successful with.
Thank you.
I think 15,000 weekly active listeners, which is amazing. Before we get into that though, tell us about the first, let's say 6 months, a year of building the Z-Link. What decisions did you make? What actions did you take?
Oh, yeah, 6 months to a year. One of the most valuable things I did was in the first month or two, and it was sort of just figuring out that if I needed to get customers and I needed to get the word out there, um, I needed to get press. And I didn't know how people go about getting press. I didn't have any money to pay for press. And so I started reaching out to a lot of people, and I think I sort of perfected my my cold message, literally. And I started reaching out to a lot of journalists that were writing about Gen Z and social media and marketing trends and stuff. And I was like, hey, I just launched this agency. I like your writing on this and this topic. If you ever need a source for a story, I'm happy to help. And sort of always leading with how I can help them if they need it. Because I realized that was a space back then that really wasn't crowded at all. And a lot of journalists actually replied. And then I had Business Insider interview me the next day, and they wrote like 5 articles on us that year, which was crazy. And that was all, the result of a message. So, and then these articles brought so much traffic. They got us to like the top of Google, SEO wise. They brought a lot of bigger names because of credibility in terms of clients. So I think figuring out how to get organic press and reach out to the right people was such a life hack at the start. I was just kind of like trial and error. That was amazing in how well it worked and how quick it was. And what else did I do? I was running it by myself, so I didn't have any team members at that time. And so I was just literally, there was no like ChatGPT for me to be like, how does one structure a marketing agency? Neither did I know any agency founders. So I was just kind of winging it by myself. I was managing a lot of clients myself at the start. And I was focusing also on slowly building a personal brand that then could bring more clients in, which it did, and sort of focusing on what would create an inbound stream of clients, which has always been the goal. So I think this is where I put my focus: personal brand, outreach to press, and then kind of managing all the clients and trying to do good work until I had enough retainer work to be able to start hiring people. Yeah.
And if we take the opposite of that, let's say we didn't focus on marketing at all, we just focused on like getting one client case study or building a product that you could then sell. A lot of the time when I speak to founders, they say that they've fallen in the trap of focusing so much on the product that they don't think about how to get customers,
Yeah.
how to build demand for what they're trying to create. What gave you that conviction that the press needed to come first and then your personal brand?
Honestly, I feel like I knew how to do the job. So it's easier when it's a service-based business because I don't need to like perfect the product at the start, right? I'm like, I know what I need to do mostly. And so my biggest priority was just, getting clients because I needed to get some case studies, get word of mouth, like be able to sort of to hire. So that was a priority because without clients, I wouldn't be able to hire or grow, and I didn't want to fundraise. So it was kind of a natural point for me to focus on because it seemed like without that, I wouldn't have a business. Yeah.
And so help us understand the dynamics of getting press. So what is it that the journalists are looking for? How do you be where they want you to be with the message they want to share?
Honestly, my like secret
I feel like
trick.
there's some secret sauce in here.
Yeah, I've got a document I send to all my friends. I can send that to you as well, of my and anyone listening if you're interested.
Yeah, we should include in the...
For sure. Yeah, it's like my template for cold messaging. And I think that starts from like I kind of have strong opinions on messaging people because as a founder or just as like anyone, I think right now, you receive like a million messages a month on LinkedIn from people trying to sell you stuff. I don't know if it's the same for you probably, and so many pitch emails and just
ads, recruiters.
so much that I do not care about at all and I never open. And I think that gives you so much. I've never hired someone like that ever, or it's just never worked. And I receive so many, it's insane. And I think that gave me so much insight on how to actually reach out to people to get them to reply. Because especially journalists, they receive like probably 5 times as many messages a day. and pitches and automated pitches and just, a bit of everything. It must be just chaotic to navigate. And I think one of the primary, I've never studied sales, but I think when you're running a business, one of the first things you learn ends up being sales kind of organically by doing it. And one of the main things I learned about sales just by doing and seeing was that you want to focus on what you can contribute, right? Not what you're asking for. And I think, because everyone is asking those people for things all the time. Journalists, founders, people you're selling to. I was like, can you please give me 5 minutes of your time? No. No one can because they're so busy. So my focus was focus on what I can contribute and then find journalists that were writing about relevant topics. So I wasn't wasting their time, who is actually likely to care. Read some of their work, mention something, which now I guess everyone does, like AI, personalized sort of one-liners. But that was helpful. Show them that I actually read their work, say something about it, and then be like, if you're writing a story about this or that topic, I'm the founder of this company, this is what we focus on. Just reach out anytime and I'm very happy to help. And then it doesn't come across as spammy or as if you're asking them for anything at all. It's very sort of, there's no commitment, you're not asking for anything. And then most of the time, because journalists work with quite tight deadlines and they do need good sources to quote, if they're, for example, for me, when they were writing about the rise of Gen Z consultants or what Gen Z is looking for in the workplace, they would look in their inbox and be like, who brought up Gen Z to me the other day? And then just be like, do you have a quick 10 minutes to do a quick interview? And then that gives you so much. And for them, it helps them get to their deadline on time. So just kind of pretty mutually beneficial, I think.
So show me you know me.
Yeah.
And give before you ask.
Yeah.
How, in terms of then combining the press with your personal brand, how did you think about creating this kind of inbound magnet for opportunities?
I honestly believe that when you put yourself out there authentically, and I know everyone says authentically and it kind of loses its meaning, but I do believe it in the sense of not just copying what everyone's doing around you, because that can get really overwhelming and exhausting. Just putting yourself out there in a way that you enjoy, basically, and talking online about whatever feels enjoyable to you. If you look at my LinkedIn posts, they're literally all over. There's no niche. Doing that, I truly believe, brings the right people to you and the right opportunities. So that ends up being your inbound magnet. And I think for it to be sustainable, you have to start with what feels enjoyable and sustainable to you to maintain. Because I could just see that there's so many agency founders succeeding on TikTok and then try to do that myself every day. But I really don't enjoy making TikToks. And I know anytime I try to stick to it for more than 5 days, I just don't. So for me, it has to be writing. And then I just go, okay, if writing's more enjoyable to me, what platforms can I do that on where my target customer also is? LinkedIn, sometimes Substack. And so just creating my little bubble there where I express myself and then slowly but surely start reaching the right people. That has been working so well. And I think pretty much every single opportunity, maybe 99% of our opportunities in the past 5 years have been inbound. And so I don't really focus on outbound sales. I do think if you do some outbound, it might as well be press outreach. Yeah.
And so when you're thinking about finding the right clients, how did you get clarity on who you wanted to build the agency for and who mattered most?
Trial and error, to be fair. Because at the start, I was like, I'll take anyone that that wants our services. Yeah, trial and error for sure. And figuring out, for me and for us now at the Z-Link, it's more about the team than about the product, I would say. I think the product can be anything because so many different industries come to us that there's no commonality, there's no common denominator. It's just any brand that wants help reaching Gen Z and sort of providing some value without getting lost in the ether. So we don't really go based on industry or company size or anything, but rather what kind of team do we tend to work best with? Because then that allows us to do our best work. So I think it's more like a vibe check sometimes.
Super, super quick one from me. Every week I ask our listeners, what is one tool that they couldn't live without? And this week, it's superpower. And I promise this isn't an ad. They're not paying us to say this. Superpower's a new kind of health clinic that lets you test your entire body directly from your home. And their tests are super comprehensive. They pick up over 100 biomarkers, as well as all of the essentials like sleep and even cognitive performance. Those readings are then fed into a personal health advisor that sits right in your pocket inside their mobile app. To learn more, if you're interested, check out the link in the description. And for now, let's get back into it. The other topic, we were talking about this before, is the power of UGC, user-generated content.
Yeah.
So how, we had this dissolution of people following brands, then people following people backed by brands, and now brands or agencies are working with thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of different micro-influencers who are authorities in their communities to create UGC. What is UGC and why is it so powerful?
Yeah, well, it is, you're right. UGC is user-generated content, which is sort of, there's a lot of different types, but it looks like organic content on social media, usually organic video content that is created by like a real person. But it doesn't have to be an influencer or someone with an audience. It can just be a real person like talking about a product and making it seem like an authentic endorsement and like a real person recommendation rather than a very branded video, if that makes sense. So I think now that's kind of what UGC is, and it's evolved a lot. UGC creators that do that as their main thing, they tend to work with brands as sort of external content creators that will come in and do like a batch of videos, for example, or one or two high production videos, like video ads that would usually convert well, and then the brand can just use those however they'd like. So yeah, UGC does work really well because it seems very organic, and even if it's branded, it tends to just have like an unbranded feel.
Who's doing a great job of UGC at the moment, do you think?
Which brand?
Which brand, yeah, or which creators?
There's a cool example now, which is it's kind of a new type of UGC, and it's on Substack, and it's by Hinge. So Hinge is working with Substack writers, and calling them sort of Hinge partners. And what they do is instead of doing a video like traditional UGC, they'll write a piece, a Substack blog or an essay on something that is just like sponsored by Hinge, and it can be something related to like modern love or whatever interests them. And I think the only like the main branded part is just that it's sponsored by the brand. But it works really well because it's very culturally aware right now, because a lot of young people, a lot of people in like London and New York and the cities that tend to use Hinge a lot of them, the very like sort of artsy ones, are also on Substack. So it's kind of a very culturally aware collaboration that's not boring.
It's not a collab that I would have imagined.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like an unexpected one. And I think that's why it's working really well, because it's smaller creators. They're not oversaturated at all, and they're not getting a million brand deals a month at all, because Substack is quite untapped in terms of brand deals still. So, and also their audiences, like 10,000 subscribers on your newsletter on Substack, know you a lot better than 10,000 followers on TikTok often, because it's long form.
Sure.
And it's usually a lot more engagement. So it just, I think, works really well in the brand's favor. So that's like one UGC collaboration right now that I'm thinking was very smart. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen these kind of performance-based kind of monetization schemes where I think it was Tabs, the chocolate that was like an aphrodisiac that you could buy for you and your partner, you would split. And of course, because it kind of plays to these natural human tendencies of, wow, what would it be like to use this product? It had this inherently viral loop of, I've got to tell it about Tabs to my 5 closest friends to see what they think of it. But they really did well, not just giving the creators videos they'd made as a brand, but saying, here's the brief, now create something that's relevant or linked to it in any way, and we'll
I
pay
love
you
that.
based on thousands of views.
Yeah, I think that's really smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, brands that kind of leave a lot of freedom, and it's just like, we'll either pay based on performance, which is also pretty good, or just kind of let the creator do whatever they want and just have it sponsored by the brand, or just embed it in a way that feels organic and doesn't feel forced. I think that's the most important part.
Have you or the Z-Link team thought about moving into like a UGC agency?
No, although we do a lot of, well, big part of what we do is UGC, but we wouldn't switch to being fully a UGC agency.
Mm.
Although it's very much at the heart of what we do. We've got our in-house UGC creators, and then they'll create content for a lot of our clients that appears very organic, sometimes on a new account, that is like a personal account, or on the brand's account.
Mm.
And we love it. Like, it's so much better than making like just branded ads, I guess. So yeah, it is a big part of what we do. But there's agencies, like there's one called Playkit that's doing a great job in the US, that focus only on UGC. And what they do is they sort of activate, like, I think, I don't know, hundreds of videos over a month. It's something like five or 600 videos, I feel.
Wow.
If I'm correct. I'm sorry if I'm not, but I think so. Because they've got tons of creators doing tons of videos across multiple accounts. So it's sort of like crazy UGC activation for brands. Higher price point, but also high reward, because you're getting just so much content from like student UGC creators that know how to get like sort of a college vibe. So for brands that are very, very like student focused, for example, and they just want tons of content, there's that kind of model as well, which I think is pretty cool.
If we think about content, the other thing I wanted to get your thoughts on is this, rather than thinking about different platforms as individual channels, TikTok, LinkedIn, Substack, this idea that you can create one piece of content
Yeah.
and repurpose and refer it across many different channels to almost take the viewer, the audience on a story around your brand.
I think that's pretty smart, if executed correctly. I think you don't always have to do that, because sometimes it doesn't make sense to spread your resources too thin across every platform. Because sometimes, like, what works well on TikTok just won't really work well on LinkedIn. But sometimes brands are really leaving like engagement on the table by not doing it as well. For example, video on LinkedIn now would work much better. So putting your TikToks on LinkedIn could be smart. For me, when I post my photography or like my video work, I just got like one on Substack get 15,000 likes, and on Instagram it got like 100. And Instagram is typically my photography outlet, right? So it kind of like experimenting with different platforms to see how your audience reacts to different formats of content can teach you a lot, I think. Because I wouldn't have done that. I just was like, let's try it here. And then it works so much better than I thought. So repurposing is good if you just like try it out and see what works. But I think it's not like super necessary, because sometimes you just figure out where your audience is and stick to that. And I do think there's such a thing as like spreading yourself too thin when it comes to creating content. And then when it becomes unsustainable and not consistent, I think that's when it becomes a problem.
How do you know when it's the right time to start investing quite a bit of budget in a piece of content? How do you kind of get that early user feedback, maybe focus groups, maybe Telegram channels? I'm thinking about how do you kind of short circuit figuring out if this is going to work?
I'd say that mostly on TikTok. For example, for our clients or for ourselves at the Z-Link, if I see a piece of content just doing a lot better in the first 2 days, I might put some money behind it and then we boost it as a paid ad. That's usually the best way, because TikTok just tests this so fast for you that you'll have a pretty immediate answer to whether it's working or not. Instagram can also take a bit longer, but TikTok is a pretty good way to see if something is working extra well in the first 2 days and you put some money behind it, you're probably going to get good results, because it does just mean that you can see it's a piece of content that is resonating. And I think that's the main question, like, is this piece resonating or not? So the moment you see that, then you can decide, okay, maybe we spread this, maybe we double down, turn it into a series. Like, there's a lot of things you can do.
Yeah, but I've heard exactly what you're saying, that Twitter and TikTok can be the kind of top of funnel experimentation. And then if you want to put more budget behind it, maybe you then build out some long form on YouTube, Spotify.
Exactly, yeah.
So for the next part of the episode, Erifili, I'd love to then switch gears from the Z-Link into your writing,
Amazing.
because this has been a big part of you and your life. You started a blog, Crystal Clear. What inspired you to do that?
Honestly, just I was like, I write so much. I I write so much, and I was like, I need a place to put my writing. It was very simple. And Substack was rising a lot in the past like year, maybe a year and a half ago is when I started it, I think. It actually wasn't rising a lot at that point, but it just was appearing a lot and again and again. Back then I thought it was like getting really big, but compared to where it is now, where like everyone knows about Substack, I think, these were truly like early days. But I think I was seeing it a lot in my circle and I was like, I'll just give that a shot because I didn't know where to put a newsletter. And I mainly just wanted a place to host my long form writing, longish form. So that's what inspired it. It's just erifili.substack.com, so I didn't like think of branding it or anything. And then later on I changed the name to Crystal Clear because I wanted to put a little bit more of a focus on what I was writing about. And I've found it just like the best platform, honestly, for sharing my writing and building a community around that. It's been so helpful.
And what is the theme behind Crystal Clear? Because at least from when I was reading through it myself, it seems that you've done an amazing job at taking experiences that all of us have and writing them out in these discrete little nuggets that you can consume in, like, you can read it in like 5, no more than 10 minutes, and it really speaks to you. Like when I read it, I really hear your voice in it, and it's very clear and it just seems very natural. So what would you say is the kind of theme behind Crystal Clear?
I'm so glad that you say that. Like, I'm glad you say that it sounds clear and it sounds like easy and no fluff and stuff. But the theme is that um, I didn't start from the theme. I kind of started just writing, and then I was like, what is actually the theme behind everything I enjoy writing about, right? Like, what actually connects everything I tend to write about naturally? And I think it was that I love distilling, taking complex topics and distilling them into small bits of clarity. So crystal clear, because I hope that when someone reads it, they're like, oh, okay. They have a little light bulb moment when it comes to like usually big questions. And it's a bit of philosophy and a bit of just life. And I think how I think of it is I share lessons that I learn about creating a happy life and just really like living with yourself and others. Like I think there's a big part in it that's self-discovery and human connection. And then at the core is just how to build a happy life. And I think there's a lot of questions within that resonate with almost everyone. And I just share what I've learned in my journey. And then sometimes people are like, this is exactly what I needed to hear. Like, I'm like printing this out and putting it on my fridge. And that's exactly what I want. So that's really good.
So this is exactly what I love about the blog. You actually start each article with a question, and it's super simply worded. The first one that I read, what's stopping you from doing what you really want?
Yeah. That one, I honestly didn't even realize I start them all with a question until you said it. But I think I do. At least recently. Yeah. That one is just sometimes like the way I write is just there's like a theme always in my mind every month. Like there's always something circling around in my head. And then I end up just being like, what is it that I'm trying to learn this month? Or what is it that this period of my life is teaching me? And what I was thinking a lot about recently, like in this piece, was about how very often you just know deep down what you want to do. And that is in any situation. But you just don't know that A, you already know, and B, that you can trust that. And I think I've learned that a lot in the past few years. It sort of relies on the basis that I really believe you owe yourself a life well lived. And I go based on that principle of, okay, I owe myself a life well lived. What does that mean? It means that I can't be an obstacle to myself between me and my own goals and dreams. And sort of realizing that and seeing what it means in practice, and how it comes up in my life and in my friends' lives, and how it actually just stops people from building a life that they enjoy. Because I feel like, whatever success means to you, I feel like we all want to build lives that are happy, like assumption, but I think so. So I think that's kind of always at the core. So how do you give yourself that life well lived, or that joyful everyday life? And that piece was just about how we are always going to find excuses to not do what we want to do. And very often they are fears or anxiety or the fact that others are telling you what to do or what you should do. And I think I've just learned so much in the past that no one knows what you should do. And I think, like, really, you're the only person that does. It's very simple, but I think until you really live it and go through that lesson for yourself, it's not as obvious as it sounds.
Why do you think we seek permission, seek validation, assume the answers outside of ourselves?
I think it's because most of us, or just many of us, like, don't know how to trust ourselves until we build that. And I think some people are just, they grow up fully trusting themselves, and that's great. But I don't see that very often in people around me. I can probably name them, in one hand. Um, and so I think that learning to trust yourself is such a process in life, and it really comes through experience. And so if you don't fully trust yourself, it's really hard to not seek external permission for everything you want to do, right? And I think I used to be always like, do you think I should do this? Do you think I should do that? Like, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no one can tell you what you want.
Yeah. And it almost seems like
Yeah.
the more information you get when you ask those questions, the more questions you have.
Yeah.
Well, I should check if the thing that person told me
Yeah.
is right in my context. Let's ask another
Yeah,
couple of people.
exactly. And sometimes it's helpful to hear other perspectives, right? But I think the most helpful thing for me when I had to make sort of like really, really tough decisions in the past, and it was just sort of fully my call. And I think big decisions are obviously so scary because whatever you do, there will be circumstances and consequences. And so you tend to just try to outsource that decision making. But I think I remember my dad telling me, look, truly hear this, the only person that knows what you want to do is you. And there was no right or wrong in that situation. Like in many of these decisions, there's only one path or the other. And just remembering and realizing that, oh shit, like I am the only person that knows what I want. Damn.
That's super. That places a heavy burden on yourself to have the answer. It's also very freeing.
It is, yeah, because it means that once you realize that, that's enough of a reason to do it, right? You don't, like, if I realize this is what I want and this is for my life, and obviously we're not talking about like doing things that are bad for yourself or others, right? We're talking like, maybe like breaking up from a relationship that's not right for you, or quitting your job, going for a different career, things like that. Sort of moving country, making a sort of life change. Once you realize that, it's like, okay, I know I want that. That's enough of a reason to actually chase it and do it. So I think that's quite freeing because it means you don't have to justify it, or it doesn't have to make sense to anyone else, because that's where intuition comes into play, in the sense that I think your body's always trying to tell you something. And if you've ever been in like a situation that's wrong for you for a while, I know my heart rate is always elevated, my skin is getting bad, I'm not sleeping as well, and over time, these things, like, become apparent, and to me that's your body giving you an actual clear signal. So that's a pretty good, like, sign for you to that you know what you actually wanna be doing.
And often these things, these urges, tendencies, intuitions, it might not make sense.
Yeah.
I guess that's the point, right? Like you may
Yeah.
have evidence that you've done it before, it's worked. You also said in the writing that you used to assume if it was in any way creative,
Yeah.
you should keep it as a hobby.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's more career related, right? I guess I always loved doing a lot of creative things like photography and writing. Like, two of my biggest things, are those two. But I guess I never even really thought about doing them as a job ever, like until obviously the past couple of years. It just didn't occur to me. So I think, like, when you think of what do you love doing, what do you actually enjoy spending your time doing? Um, I used to just not even consider the things I actually really love doing as viable choices, just because, um, yeah, just because maybe they were creative and I wasn't really thinking that's a real option,
Mm.
although it is, and I've got like so much proof around me that it is. So now I know that, but it took a while.
Yeah, you said in the article at the end, if I feel a strong internal pull towards something, that's all the convincing I need.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you relate to that as well in the way that you make decisions, but for me, it's a pretty big part of it.
It's something that I would love to be able to do more,
Mhm.
speaking openly about it. I
Yeah.
think I was and have been for a long time that person that would get 5 of my close friends, "Hey, what do you think about this idea?"
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this today before we started recording. I was like, what would my life look like if I completely trusted every intuition
Yeah.
that I had?
Probably pretty good.
But it also means the hard part of that is, but I guess that's just a consequence, as you mentioned, is it means saying no to a lot of things. It
Yeah.
means starting, trying, and saying, that's not actually
Yeah.
for me. And you feel that and you assume that I am the only one that has the answer.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think because you said that's something you're trying to do more, it's definitely something you can cultivate. And for me, it has been an ongoing process for maybe actively, like only the past 2 years.
Hmm.
And I can see how now, when you flip a coin and you just know where you want it to land, but really deep inside you do, or when you're going to your friends for advice on something, on what you should decide,
Yep.
and you're like, please say that, please say that.
Yep.
Like, that's intuition on what you want to do. I think we just don't tend to be as conscious about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's another good litmus test for you as to whether it is coming from your intuition? From other people I've heard, it's what you think about when you're on a walk. It's what you
Mhm.
think about when you're in the shower, when you don't need to be thinking about anything.
Yeah, yeah. Um, One thing is on that question too, another way to kind of reframe it that I think is helpful is like how to tell if it's intuition or anxiety. Because if you are quite an anxious person, which I feel like pretty much everyone is right now, a lot of times it might feel like intuition, but it's actually anxiety, or vice versa. And a lot of times you're getting like a strong internal feeling that's like, oh, I don't know if I should actually do this. And you're like, but wait, how do I know if this is just fear and anxiety holding me back or intuition? So for me, there's a few ways to tell. One is that literally in your body physically, anxiety tends to feel higher up in your chest. So if you feel like a knot in your chest, that's usually anxiety.
Mm.
And for some people it might feel different, but you can sort of learn what things feel like in your body. What does fear feel like? What does like a good sign or excitement feel like, right? Like I know for one of my friends, we were talking about this exact question, and she said, for me, intuition is like in my stomach. It's like a
Mhm.
strong feeling in my stomach. So you can learn to tell physical signs, because emotions really do manifest in your body in specific places. And I guess we do know that by now so well, especially with anxiety or like with how you feel in your chest or in your throat, right? That's one thing. Another is, for me, it's what I mentioned about like sort of what deep down you hope will happen. Like when I maybe that's too personal to share. I was gonna say like, when it comes to like old relationships that I knew deep down weren't right, but I just used to be like, I just want someone to tell me that it's not right,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
You almost just want, and that's intuition telling you, girl, just you're telling yourself it's not right. That's pretty much enough. So it's kind of like you have an intuition of something that you really want other people to tell you to do.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, that's even like now, we're looking for, I'm moving and we're looking at different flats. And I'm like, okay, what am I hoping will be available? And what am I low-key hoping will not be available because I don't like it that much?
Even though it might make sense on paper.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So really listening to that. And I think it's very easy to ignore that. It's like really, really easy to ignore that and just be like, oh, I'm just going to focus on like all the logical qualities. Um, I guess just figuring out that you want to prioritize that feeling too is a pretty big part in the process.
Mhm.
Being like, okay, I'm actually like, I can't just scrap that thought away every time I have it. Like, I have to actually pay attention and ask myself, what is this telling me? It's telling me that something here is not working for me.
Mhm.
So I might as well address it.
And the superpower, I think, is when you realize it's always there
Yeah.
and you can choose to tune into it.
Exactly. Yeah. I think intuition is such a superpower, honestly, and we're just not really taught how to use it. So for me, that's been pretty important in the past few years because I do think like your body has a lot of wisdom that your mind hasn't processed yet, logically.
I love that.
Right? Yeah, it makes sense. It does because you can't process everything logically. And if something makes sense on paper and through reasoning, but it doesn't feel good for you, then kind of like whose life are you living? You know, if your life doesn't feel good for you, I feel like that's a pretty good sign that there's something where you're just going based on what you should be loving, but you're not. So I think these are all such important things that we just don't really talk about much.
And we can get into the habit of over-indexing on the logic and, as you say, living a life that is some form of what we wanted.
Yeah.
But you feel like your whole personality, at least I've felt this in the past, that everything's attenuated, everything's driven down. You're not as excited. You don't feel as, present in the moment. You're not really in the conversation with your friends. You're kind of, that something on a core level is
For sure.
off.
Something's wrong. Yeah, exactly. You do know that something's off. And when you ignore that just because it's easier, because many times it is easier to ignore, I think it causes so many long-term problems. And almost always, like on the other side of that scary leap is something really good. I don't know about you, but I can like identify a lot of times where I was really on the verge and I took a leap and then I'm like, thank God I did that, you know?
Almost like the resistance is the signal that this is the way.
Yeah, sometimes. Like, yeah, otherwise you just end up stuck in a career you hate or in a relationship you hate or in a country that's not right for you. And who is that doing any good? Yeah.
The other topic that you talked about in the blog is how to get unstuck
Mm-hmm.
and how we can wait for motivation to kind of strike us by lightning.
Yeah.
That's outside of our control, or you can lean into what gives you the inspiration, what puts you in that kind of playful, open state.
Yeah. Yeah. That is just a few years ago I realized that inspiration is quite important to me, like more important than I thought or had ever like acknowledged because um I realized how important it is that I've got the time to spend on what feels inspiring at the time. Like, you know, when you just get really excited about something and you've got all this momentum and you're like, I just want to like lock in for a day and just do this. Um, like I love that feeling and you get in a flow state and that creates so much motivation. And I think there's ways to put yourself in sort of create the conditions for emergence, for inspiration. Um, so that then you create motivation and momentum for yourself, if that makes sense. So I think noticing what tends to inspire you a lot, which can be so many different things. It can be like having conversations or listening to a podcast or talking to like a specific friend of yours that just tends to be really motivating or whatever. Or even like watching a certain type of YouTube video. I feel like a lot of people get inspired through content. And then that gets them in a mood to romanticize what they have to do or like romanticize their job or their career or whatever. I think this sort of moment, this place that you put yourself in, that actually ends up giving you the feeling of inspiration that creates momentum and it gets you motivated to work on what you have to work on. Because I think you can't always be in the mood to, like, even if you love your job and everything, sometimes you're just not in the mood, right? And I guess my point is you can create that mood, but you have to be quite self-aware about what tends to give you that spark of inspiration. And even if you're not feeling it at the start, put yourself in that situation. Be like, I'm gonna watch like this creator or go talk to this friend because I know by the end of it, even though I'm not feeling it now, I will be feeling it. So I think that's kind of like a little life hack on how you stay consistently motivated.
And how, for people that are thinking, well, what could it be that actually puts me in this inspired state that gets me motivated? How do you think about that?
It's very personal, right? Like it differs for person to person. Well, one thing that's like an easy enough example is like I love to write and journal. I've got so many journals. I just love to just like stream of consciousness write because I think it's so helpful to my thinking. But sometimes I'm just not in the mood to journal. It's been like 2 weeks and I haven't touched the paper, you know? And I'm like, I know I like to do this and I know this is so helpful for me and I actually enjoy it, but I'm not feeling it. But then if I like see on TikTok, like people sort of posting their journals and showing their journals and their notebooks that they use and how they write every day, then I'm like, okay, I'm in the mood to journal, like, and then I just go and do that. So that's a very easy way for me to see that, okay, this actually, for whatever reason, just inspires me to go and do what's good for me. Or I think a lot of people do this with fitness and fitness creators, right? And gym creators. You kind of have to romanticize going to the gym, and it helps them stay disciplined and motivated because they follow these creators online or whatever that sort of give them that like push of like, okay, this looks good. I want to be doing this right now. So I think just noticing when it is you get that feeling and you're like, oh, I've just been really in the mood to go to the gym more lately or to journal more lately or whatever. It's just like you're in that phase. Yeah.
Yeah, Ali Abdaal talks a lot about this in his content in his book. He talks about what would this look like if it were fun.
Nice. I love that. I love that. I think that's so important as well. Like making something just fun for yourself. Like maybe changing your environment, adding stuff around you that makes it more fun, or just like having a snack, having a friend, whatever, like whatever it is for you that just makes it feel more engaging. And to me, I guess the word is really more like romanticized, because I think that is a part of it, is like you tend to romanticize like working when you're working in a super nice space, or you've got your friends co-working with you and you've got your coffees or whatever, and then you're just more motivated.
It's incredible how if you go from like not even a dingy office, but a tiny little box of a room with no natural light in, facing a white wall, to going for a walk, sitting outside with a pen and paper, and you can see the sky and the trees. It feels like what we see as a direct relationship to how our mind feels. Open, expansive.
Yeah, you're so right.
Final question from me, Erifili, and this has been wonderful. If we fast forward, let's say 30 years in the future, and you and I are sitting next to each other on the proverbial deck chair, and you look up and we can see the stars, and I turn to you and I say, Erifili, what was it all for?
That's such a great question. Like very existential. Like, what was it all for? Also, I'm picturing like a very interstellar style deck.
Yeah, we can be in space.
Yeah, sort of Interstellar, like the movie, the deck like outside. That's kind of what I'm seeing. That's the vibe. So it's very existential. I think for me, I'm pretty set on the fact that I just want to give myself a good life, and I'm pretty determined on making it happen on every front. So I think like if you ask me 30 years, what was it all for? And I'm satisfied by that point, and I'm not stressed out or hating my life in some way, or just unable to sleep because just something is so wrong in my life, then like it was all for that, like for peace and love, and like knowing that I did things right for myself. I think that's just really important to me. If in 30 years I've compromised on everything that deep down matters to me, I'll be like, okay, what was that for? Like what'd you get out of that? Probably nothing. So I think when you've got a full cup, then you can pour into everything else. But yeah, then I ask you, what was it all for, Joe? What do you say?
Wow, okay, yeah. So the funny thing about having a podcast is I get to ask the questions.
Yeah, well, it's a conversation.
Yeah. If I think about it, for me, is that I didn't leave anything on the table. There was no stone that I wanted to turn over that I, to your point, got in my own way. Because I think I'm the only person that could get in my own way.
Yeah.
To do that.
No regrets, basically, on that.
No regrets, and being willing to look at the decisions that didn't go the way that I wanted, and look at it based on the outcome, not the decision. Not I was wrong and I should have known better, but to have that space to play, to experiment, to get it wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so important. There's no I should have known better, because you just did what you knew at that time.
Exactly.
Unless you really just like, did know better.
Yeah.
But, most of the time we're just too hard on ourselves when it comes to that, I think.
Yeah, and I think as humans, we overweigh risk, and we underweigh the upside of opportunity. I talked about this with the previous guest, where, if you're in a situation, let's say you have a job, you're in a relationship, you're living in this country, and it just doesn't feel quite right. We know exactly what we will be giving up if we left it, because we know how it feels right now.
Yeah.
We don't know just how good it could be,
Yeah.
if
I
we took
agree.
another option.
Yeah,
So we
that's so
massively
true.
overweigh the risk without the upside, and it
Yeah.
sounds obvious when you say it like that.
For sure, yeah, you're so right. Yeah, most of the time you're like, I just couldn't have imagined that it was gonna be that good.
Yeah, exactly. And you
Yeah.
don't know how good, especially early in life, I think, or maybe throughout the whole life, because even if we absolutely go for it every day and try something new, we're still exploring like a speck of what's possible. That does kind of scare me a bit, because then I think, I personally have had this feeling in my life of just being behind
Mhm.
all the time, not moving as fast as I wanted to, not getting as much done, being on the kind of productivity hamster wheel.
Yeah.
So a lot of your writing in Crystal Clear resonates with me in that, actually, if you listen to your intuition, for me, you can drown out a lot of what you thought you should do
Mhm.
to what you think you want to do.
Yeah, yeah, like, if you get to the root of that, like, I'm not doing enough, I'm not going fast enough, you actually find what is there for you, because of course, it might be different for everyone. I think that can really take a lot of that pressure away sometimes,
Yeah.
because 'cause you're like, "Oh, this is just because" I don't know, there can be so many reasons, but then you realize that you're actually just doing what you wanna be doing right now. So it is right for you, and this is just your rhythm. There's always gonna be someone faster, and also much slower. You're just where Joe is meant to be.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I've loved the conversation, Erifili. Thanks so much for
Me
coming.
too. Thank you so much.